Anthony Richardson is back, but he has to square up with one of the best defenders in NFL history in his return. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is presented by LinkedIn Jobs, which helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. What is up, everyone? I am Jake Arthur, joined today by Andrew Moore. We're of horseshoehuddle.com. We're coming to you live today from Nevermore here at the beautiful Union Station. The Colts and the Rams are about to square off here in a couple hours. Colts are riding a nice 2-1 high, probably exceeding expectations compared to where a lot of people had them. Sitting atop the AFC South right now. So sitting pretty. They kind of control their own destiny early in the season already. So plenty to talk about today. We're going to kind of cruise through what the offense should do to become victorious, what the defense should be capable of, and ultimately we'll make a little prediction, get some prediction action going, Andrew. So first up, let's talk injuries. Colts came in surprisingly banged up in this one late in the week. The news all along was that Anthony Richardson was a full participant throughout practice after missing most of the last 2 games, about 1.5 games. He was a full participant all week, cleared the concussion protocol, but then on Friday, a bunch of new names turn up. So now coming into the game, we've got questionable DeForest Buckner, who should probably play, Sam Ehlinger, Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, and Bernhard Raimann. The latter 2 have actually already been ruled out. Kelly did not clear through the concussion protocol, and then Bernhard Raimann entered into it super late. I think he first came on the scene there on Friday. He had reported some symptoms to the team and then entered into the protocol. And obviously that late in the week, too late to clear it. So that's a bummer. The Colts will be without their left tackle. Sounds like it's probably going to be Blake Freeland getting the start there. Ryan Kelly being out as well. So you're down 2 starting linemen. Wesley French and Blake Freeland should take over there. Quentin Nelson has been on this injury report a couple weeks now, but I don't anticipate any issue there. This has been kind of rinse and repeat for him. The biggest, Braden Smith luckily got taken off as well. He had been dealing with an injury, wrist injury, popped up on Friday, but does not carry an injury designation. So Anthony Richardson returning this week, but shorthanded up front. I will say the silver lining is it's good that it's Richardson and not Minshew.
Oh, yes.
Because Anthony Richardson, obviously, sack avoidance is one of his biggest strengths. Meanwhile, Gardner Minshew does not have very good peripheral vision, I guess you could say, if last week was any indicator. So what are you feeling from this one? Good that Anthony Richardson is back, but his protection might be a little spotty.
Yeah, and going up against one of the greatest defensive players of all time, in Aaron Donald,
right.
There's definitely cause for concern. Obviously, you would have loved to have Ryan Kelly back. He is the leader of this offensive line. But Bernhard Raimann, how well he's been playing this year, and to have that, just you don't have to worry about that left side anymore. Bernhard Raimann has, I think, only allowed the 4 pressures total in 134 pass blocking snaps so far this season. So when Raimann is out there so far this season, you don't really have to worry about it. Now Blake Freeland gets the start at left tackle, rookie. He had his ups and downs in preseason. There's no doubt about it. And today, going up against a Rams defensive front that really wants to get after the quarterback, really wants to attack Anthony Richardson, make him uncomfortable, and try to force the rookie into some mistakes. That offensive line is going to have to be heavily relied upon in order for this Colts offense to really succeed. So huge test for Blake Freeland and Wesley French, and they're going to have to go and prove that they're up to the test.
I will say, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel a lot more confident in the schematic ability to understand what their shortcomings are going to be. Like, I not to punch down on any coaching decisions that had previously been made, but I feel like Shane Steichen understands when they're going to have clear holes in the offense and how to get around those. Like, I expect today to see, probably not a lot of runs going on along the left side, or, they'll counter what they know their weaknesses are going to be, use the short passing game as an extension of the run game. Just things that teams need to do if you're going to be really banged up and allowing a lot of pressure, especially when you've got a quarterback like Anthony Richardson that can get outside. Like, you probably just want to avoid the left side altogether. So I'm comfortable in the Colts coaching ability to adapt to that. So that's not something I'm super concerned with, but like, that's not to say they're not going to allow pressure. Like, Aaron Donald would allow pressure if it was Quentin Nelson and Zach Martin on the inside,
Yeah, exactly. And I think one way to kind of combat that as well, we might see more Mo Alley Cox today. You put Mo Alley Cox over on that left side to help out Blake Freeland a little bit. Maybe you see Quentin Nelson kind of keeping his eye over there. I think Aaron Donald, the Colts are going to have to be really careful to give Wesley French some help, and Will Fries. Typically, they're going to put Aaron Donald over the interior lineman that struggles. I know we talked about the one-on-one matchup between Aaron Donald and Quentin Nelson. I'm sure we'll see that today, but the Rams are smart enough to know we want to put our best player on the weak link of that Colts offensive line, which when they're healthy would probably be Will Fries, even though Will Fries has had a great start to the year. Now you've got Wesley French in there who's been solid, but the way Ryan Kelly started out this season, it still hasn't been up to that level. So you maybe keep a tight end there. You might see a lot of quick game, try to get the ball out of Anthony Richardson's hands very quickly, a lot of RPO action just to keep this defense off balance. And I agree with what you said about the schematics for this coaching staff versus the coaching staff of a few years ago. It seems like Shane Steichen knows what he has. He's confident in his players, but he's not overconfident or confident to a fault of what they're capable of doing. So he knows that this Rams defense is going to try to get after those guys, the Blake Freelands, the Wesley French, but I think he's going to be able to scheme things up and try to combat that quick pressure that the Rams are certainly going to try to bring today.
Yeah, I think a staple we saw with the previous regime was like the wham blocks and like using a lot of Jack Doyle and Mo Alley Cox to get that going. I think that makes a lot of sense today. Like you mentioned, the RPO stuff, trying to get outside, that makes a lot of sense. So talking about kind of focusing in on Anthony Richardson, his return is pretty big because like Gardner Minshew was 2-0. Yes, a lot. Like there has been some quiet chatter about Minshew, stay. Like some people have suggested, like, does he stay on the field even with Richardson back? No, because like if you have to, that seems like just box score scouting at its most obtuse, honestly. Yeah, look at this, and the offense hasn't really. They're winning because of the defense mostly. The offense is doing enough. Like they're getting by kind of with the bare minimum of what the offense should be able to accomplish. But with Richardson, that opens up things in a running game that has already been really good with Zach Moss. Moss that's probably gonna create even more avenues for him. It stretches out the coverage on defense, but then it also perhaps is going to open up this downfield passing game that we've just been waiting to see. And that doesn't just mean Alec Pierce beating his defender on an island, gaining 2-3 yards of separation. It's the tight ends killing things up the seam. There's so many things that can be done downfield that Richardson it's more in his DNA to attack those things.
This offense is just so much more dynamic with Anthony Richardson back there under center. I mean, yes, you look at the box score. Gardner Minshew came in against the Texans, got the victory. Came in and played against the Baltimore team, got the victory. But if you were actually watching that game, and this is what I wrote for horseshoehuddle.com on Sunday, it was the defense and Matt Gay that won that game for the Indianapolis Colts. Gardner Minshew did just enough to not make the offense an abject disaster. But at the same time, if you had to rely on Gardner Minshew to win that game, the Colts scored one offensive touchdown last weekend. So it's just to say that that the Colts should put in Gardner Minshew over Anthony Richardson, again, you nailed it. Box score watching, and it kind of defeats the purpose of what this whole season is still about, the development of Anthony Richardson. This Colts team is unlikely to make a playoff run. I think they would be lucky to make the playoffs. And that's what this Colts team needs to focus on 2024, 2025, and beyond. It's about getting Anthony Richardson out there, getting him the most snaps possible, and letting him learn, go through the ups and downs of his rookie season. And even to that point, in my opinion, this offense is much better with Anthony Richardson out there. The threat of the explosive plays, the threat of Anthony Richardson using his legs, it opens things up that Gardner Minshew just simply cannot do. Gardner Minshew is probably one of, if not the best backup quarterback in the NFL right now, but he is not at the level of Anthony Richardson, and what makes this Colts team dangerous is having number 5 out there on the field. So I'm excited to see what he can do, excited to see maybe the Colts try to open things up a little bit, see how Shane Steichen uses Anthony Richardson in the running game, because as we saw against the Houston Texans, that got off to an incredibly fast start. Now we're up a peg in defensive talent going up against the Los Angeles Rams. So the Colts are going to have to be on their A game, like we've already mentioned. Down 2 starters on the offensive line is going to change things up a little bit, but I think we're going to see an exciting game out of this offense today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Gardner is doing exactly what he was brought here to do. Like, they didn't bring him in to be the guy. They brought him in to be the guy to take, to be there until they find their Anthony Richardson type player. And he's 2-0. He's knocked it out of the park. Like, he's doing great, but that doesn't mean he's here to stay as the starter. And as you mentioned with the scoring, like, 4 field goals of 50-plus yards. That means they're not really deep into the red zone. Like, they're getting into the opponent's territory, but they're not in a position to really punch it in for a touchdown. So obviously there are limitations there. He did his job. He passed the test, but it's time for Anthony to come back. And we mentioned the run game briefly. Zach Moss has been great. Over 200 yards from scrimmage since taking over with these last couple games. In the last 6 games, since he's been counted on to be like the guy in the Colts backfield, over 20 touches per game, like 99.7 yards from scrimmage, I think, and he's scored in 3 straight games. So this guy is playing better football than he ever has played. He felt refreshed coming here to the Colts and now has been put in a feature role. But kind of the awkward thing coming up is Jonathan Taylor is being reintroduced into the mix this coming week. So Wednesday, they're going to, open up his practice window, and I don't know if he'll already be ready to play next week against the Titans. He may need a week to, get into football shape, maybe even 2, who knows. But they're opening up that 3-week window for his return. So they could have a nice 1-2 punch. I like Jonathan Taylor. If he comes back and looks like Jonathan Taylor might dominate the backfield shares, but it's really hard for me to think that Zach Moss isn't going to have a role on this team still moving forward.
I agree. And I think that Zach Moss has done more than enough to continue to have a role on this offense. I mean, he missed a game, and currently he's still 9th in the NFL in rushing with 210 yards. I think this is a blessing in disguise for the Colts, because you get Jonathan Taylor back, say his ankle is fully healed, there aren't any long-lasting effects of that. Then you have a 1-2 punch like you mentioned, and you don't have to bury Jonathan Taylor into the ground with 30 carries a game. You can get him through with 20 touches and give Zach Moss 10. That change of pace back, so that way both of these guys stay fresh, and you can continue to really pound the rock deep into the 4th quarter. As Shane Steichen said, we pass or throw the ball to score points and run to win. Well, running to win happens in that 4th quarter. So if you have a Jonathan Taylor that doesn't have 25 carries under his belt for the day, you don't have a Zach Moss that has 25 carries under his belt for the day, that's just going to make that running game more dangerous, and it's going to allow that offensive line to really push things forward and not even necessarily have to do all the work, because you have two talented backs in your backfield that can a lot of times make things happen when there's nothing there. So it definitely creates another dynamic to this offense. You throw in the running ability of Anthony Richardson, and the Colts can really attack you three different ways as far as being able to run the football. So it's going to definitely, I think, help this team as the season goes along. It's a very long season, and running backs do take a lot of hits. So getting Jonathan Taylor back obviously is a positive. But no, I do not think that just because JT is coming back within the next couple of weeks that we're going to see Zach Moss fall to the wayside. I think he has earned himself a role on this offense, and we'll continue to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you mentioned, Richardson coming back factors into it as well, because that's 5 to 7 plus carries a game as well. So you give Jonathan 18 to 20 or so carries. Zach Moss gets 10 carries. Anthony, like, your offense becomes so much more dynamic, and the run game totally becomes the most. You can literally do whatever you want because you can attack it anyway. Like, Zach Moss can run between the tackles very, very well. He's got great vision and patience. Jonathan Taylor's the total package. And then you've got to account for this alien of a quarterback that can do what only a couple others in the league can do. So that's all going to be really intriguing to see how that develops in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Coming up, guys, we're going to talk about the defensive side of the ball. They've got Matthew Stafford in the offense coming up here. Puka Nacua has been just unreal. Like, he's already a household name to fantasy players, but as a rookie, just a few weeks into it, this dude is accomplishing things that just it's crazy to see a guy wasn't like a first-round pick just dominating things like this. So we'll talk about all that here in a minute. And then the last segment, we're also going to take you guys' questions. So if you have any questions you want Andrew and I to answer about the game, go ahead and fire those in there. I'll look at them in the chat here towards the end, and we will get those answered for you. But first, a word from our sponsors. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs if you're an employer. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so that you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. You know, in this LinkedIn thing, if you add someone in the final fiscal quarter, it can help push you over to your goals. Look at that like this Jonathan Taylor thing. You're adding someone, week 4, week 5, whatever, and they can help push you to the places you want to go. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. All right. So looking at this Colts defense against the Rams offense today, on paper, like, some people are probably not going to be too worried about it, but Matthew Stafford is still that guy. Like, he's back relatively healthy, and he can spin it as well as any quarterback in the NFL can. And when he was here last time, it was week 1, and Cooper Kupp went on to have that historic season, like dang near breaking a bunch of different single season records. And it started against the Colts, really. He doesn't have Cooper Kupp out there, but Puka Nacua has quickly become that go-to guy, that zone blaster. And so the Colts are going to have to play more man defense today in the secondary to settle that. Tutu Atwell out of the slot is doing really, really well. Ben Skowronek is capable of making plays as well. So the run game, there's no reason for me to believe the Colts can't handle that and just take care of business there. That part doesn't scare me. They shipped off Cam Akers to the Vikings. Kyron Williams is fine. He can catch passes. Like, he's a fine player, but they're near the bottom of the league in rushing for a reason. But, man, in coverage, to me, this is going to be a Gus Bradley game, similar to what he did in week 3 last year against the Chiefs, where he's going to have to adjust the game plan from what his norms are and just totally come at Matthew Stafford. Man coverage in the secondary, bring pressure up front, because Stafford can kill you if you just sit there and give him time. So that's the main thing I'm looking at, is just making sure Matthew Stafford doesn't eat you alive for like 450, 500 yards, because he can do it.
He really can. And we've seen him do that before. Just because the Rams had a bad season last year doesn't mean Matthew Stafford can't absolutely go out there and torch this Colts secondary if he's given time. And that's why I think one of the big keys to this game, and maybe the entire for both sides of the ball, is winning in the trenches. So we already talked about the Colts offensive line and what they're up against. But this Rams offensive line isn't going to have an easy day either. The Colts defensive line has been playing outstanding to start the year. For me, I'm going to watch those two big guys right in the middle. DeForest Buckner, who is dealing with a groin injury this week, and a back injury. So Buckner is banged up. Grover Stewart there in the middle, bringing pressure right up into Matthew Stafford's face has historically been how you attack him. And don't allow him to really get comfortable back there. When you bring pressure up into Stafford's face, a lot of times it forces him into mistakes. He can't really set and get off the ball as well as he would like to. And it also will disrupt the timing with the receivers out there. Like you said, Puka Nacua, Tutu Atwell, and others. Tyler Higbee is supposed to be out there this week as well. So
just signed a nice 2-year extension.
He got paid. So it's going to be very crucial for this defensive front to continue. We saw Gus Bradley blitz a lot against the Baltimore Ravens last week, so we know he's not opposed to doing that, and he's going to have to do something to throw Stafford off his game, and the defense will probably have to take the lead again this week.
I think so too. To me, it will be a massive disappointment if they don't have to put up huge sack numbers, but they do have to keep Stafford on the move and rush his decisions, because sacks aren't always the end all be all. It's mostly pressures. You know what I mean? You have to make life difficult for that quarterback. He was sacked 6 times against the Bengals last week, and Zach mentioned this earlier in the week on our show. These defensive fronts are comparable. The Bengals have a decent defensive front, and it's about along the lines of the Colts. Kwity Paye has been great. Samson Ebukam gets a backup left tackle, it seems like, every week, and he's done exactly what you want him to against him. DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart have been great, but they're getting contributions from the second wave as well. Dio Odangbo, Taven Bryan, who's been a pleasant surprise for me.
Definitely.
Because after the summer, I thought he was just going to be a guy, but he's made a couple big plays.
He really has. And the forced fumble against the Ravens last week, just being disruptive. I mean, Taven Bryan's not going to win any awards for being a run defender, but he gives you a nice backup 3 technique that can rush the passer and be effective in spurts. So, yeah, I mean, we've seen the Kwity Paye breakout season is here. 3 sacks in 3 games. He's a handful to take down, whether it's against the run. We've been seeing him make plays, whether he's cleaning things up. That huge sack of Lamar Jackson last week, that was a very underrated play, and I think in the Colts victory. But when you go back and look at it, it was huge for the Colts to come out on top there. So this defensive line has been relentless. Nate Ollie has these guys playing fast in that attacking front, and the second unit has been the surprise. We knew what we were going to get with the starters, but seeing Bryan, seeing Dio Odangbo, even Tyquan Lewis coming back and contributing, it allows these guys to stay fresh. You get 7, 8 bodies out there that can continue to attack, keep things fresh, so you can have your starting 4 out there playing at a high octane late into the fourth quarter when they need to go out there and make plays. So, yeah, I think the Colts can make their jobs much easier if they can get after Matthew Stafford, force him into mistakes, because while Stafford can carve you up, he isn't afraid to take those chances either. And a lot of times those chances can really put the football in harm's way. So the Colts, you're going to probably see some numerous blitzes. Don't forget about Kenny Moore coming out of his slot position a couple times and getting after the quarterback. Kenny Moore does not have a sack yet this year. Could happen today.
He's got some pressures though.
It's
coming. He's been reinvigorated as well. I've talked about it recently. It was so disappointing last year. He just wasn't totally bought into the system, and then he got hurt, and it felt like we got a lost season from a special player. But he does seem reinvigorated now. He's bought into the system. They're doing a lot with him, and he's so smart. He's such a cerebral player. And if he masters this defense like he did Matt Eberflus's, then he's playing a different game than the offense is. You know what I mean? he's a step ahead of them. Like he can be a brilliant player, and we've seen him do stuff like that before. And it feels like we're kind of trending towards that direction because, again, the guy is so smart, so cerebral, just understands the game of football, and that's always going to be a detriment to the opposing defense. But so we talked about a lot about this defensive front. That creates opportunities for the linebackers, of course. And Zach, again, this is something Zach and I talked about earlier this week. I can't believe how good this linebacking core has been through 3 games, and we have almost never mentioned Shaquille Leonard. It's all Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed. Now, Leonard is contributing, and he's there, and he's doing his job, but, like, we haven't seen those big, crazy Shaq Leonard plays yet, and that's not even anything against him. That's more talking about how good this group is. Like, they have to rival every linebacking core in the NFL right now because EJ Speed is playing crazy. Like, in the box, EJ Speed has been playing nuts. Zaire Franklin is on pace to shatter records. Like, this whole group is playing awesome. And I think it's only a matter of time until we start seeing some of those Shaquille Leonard plays happen.
I think so. And I think some Colts fans are worried about Shaq Leonard, but you also have to remember Shaquille Leonard has not played football since November. He's still working his way back into going live speed. And there's not as many opportunities because you don't have Shaq Leonard playing 100% of the plays like he's accustomed to. A lot of times on third downs, Shaq Leonard will come out, EJ Speed comes in those situations, and rightfully so, because EJ Speed is playing fantastic. You can't keep a talent like that and a guy that's playing at that high of a level on the sidelines. So I think there will be opportunities for Shaq Leonard to make those plays. But at the same time, just because he's not making those turnovers, it doesn't mean that Shaq Leonard isn't doing his job. He's out there contributing. He's getting guys lined up. He's still using his instincts. The film study that Gus Bradley always talks about Shaq Leonard and him being so detailed in his preparation to the game. I know that's changed recently over the past couple years for Shaquille Leonard, but it's only a matter of time before he starts making those turnover plays like we've been so accustomed to seeing out of Leonard. So they may not come in abundance like in 2021 when we saw him involved in 12 turnovers, which is just an absurd amount for a linebacker. But they're coming, and there's no doubt that Shaquille Leonard still has a massive impact on this defense week in and week out. And I think the defense will be introduced today for the starters at Lucas Oil Stadium. First time Shaq Leonard will be introduced this year, so he's going to get a crazy ovation and really get this crowd fired up.
Yeah, he's a guy that feeds off that type of energy. And I am a bit surprised because I feel like physically he hasn't looked like an issue. He just hasn't been involved. Maybe it's because Zaire Franklin's so quick to it right now. But looking behind these guys, let's start with the cornerbacks. This is a group that was just probably the biggest question mark on the entire roster because you have all this turnover. You know, Stephon Gilmore, who's still a top 10 corner in the NFL, gone. Brandon Faison, who is a veteran and could play, you just didn't want to give him 1,000 snaps, gone. And everything totally turned over. You have Dallas Flowers now, and already Darrell Baker Jr. has been replaced in the starting lineup by Juju Brents, which is good because Brents was your second pick. Like, you want him out there. Honestly, Brents looked really good last week, and I want to kind of heed with caution because it's not going to always look that good. He's a rookie corner, and there are going to be some bumps in the road. We have inactives yet, so let's talk about the corners first, and we'll get to the inactives. But no, Juju Brents, he's going to get a lot of Puka Nacua today, so this will be kind of measuring stick game for him.
It really will be, and what a debut for Juju Brents last week. Comes out, the defense was honestly on their heels to start that game in Baltimore, and what turned things around is when Juju Brents, the hustle that he has, he knocked the football out of Kenyon Drake's hands, forced that fumble. The Colts got the turnover, and it seemed like that flipped a switch for this defense, and they really never looked back. So I've been saying this since he was drafted by the Colts in April. Juju Brents just seems like the prototypical corner for Gus Bradley's scheme.
Yeah.
Long, tall, physical, isn't afraid to do the dirty work at the line of scrimmage or get involved in the running game. And certainly there's still going to be some ups and downs with Juju Brents. I think today it's a little bit of a different matchup. You saw Juju Brents on Zay Flowers quite a bit last week. Different matchup this week with Puka Nacua. So he's going to have to be on his toes again. But you want to get Juju Brents out there, kind of the same situation Anthony Richardson is in. Let these guys develop, get them as many reps as possible, so that way down the line you can have a solid starter at cornerback and a guy that you can rely on. So very encouraging start for Juju Brents. This is really the first time we've seen him be able to stay healthy for longer than a couple weeks since he joined the Colts. And even when he joined the Colts, he was still dealing with that recovery from the wrist surgery. So great to see out of Juju Brents. The one that I think in my mind that I'm going to watch, I'm not concerned about Kenny Moore. Kenny Moore is playing like Pro Bowl Kenny Moore. Yeah. He's comfortable in this scheme. It's going to be Dallas Flowers. Dallas Flowers has shown he's had some good moments so far. He's had some bad moments so far. It seems like will Matthew Stafford try to test Dallas Flowers over on that side? Are they going to force him into some situations where Flowers panics because he can tend to get a little bit grabby when he gets behind in the play? So look for Dallas Flowers and watch to see how he plays today, because that could be the difference in the secondary.
I'm honestly fine if they do test Flowers, because that's a cocky cornerback.
Yes.
When you have a guy like that is physically capable of making plays, you want him to be wired that way, because he'll give up some plays, he'll give up some sideline shots, whatever, but that guy never stops playing. And he could give up a 60-yard bomb one play, and then he'll attempt to make the most spectacular play the next. He had, I think it was week 2, he had that one-handed pass breakup that I don't feel got enough attention. That was a nice play. So I'm not really worried about Flowers. It's not all going to be perfect, but he's a guy I like having out there. He does not quit, and he always thinks he can make the spectacular play. And I think that's how a cornerback has to be wired. So, as is going to be the norm here during these shows, 11:30 is always when inactives are announced. So we'll go ahead and go through these. Really no shocker. The only person who was ruled out, who was actually on the injury report, was Sam Ehlinger. Now, that's their emergency third corner or quarterback, so that's not insignificant. You have Anthony back this week, so that's great. If Anthony was still out, that'd be a bigger problem. So you have Anthony Richardson and Gardner Minshew, but now you have to designate another emergency quarterback. We'll see. There's guys like Kylan Granson, for example, has played quarterback before. Jelani is on IR, so we'll see if it's not Kylan. We'll see who it is. But there's guys who've played quarterback at a decent level before, somewhat recently in their football careers. So you got Darrell Baker Jr. is a healthy scratch again, which it's almost crazy to me that this has become such a feast or famine player. Because he was good enough to be your top outside corner and nickel, but he has a bad game. And now that you've got this second round pick that's ready, he's just gone. He's not even your branded face on. So to me, that shows they like Jalen Jones. But that's still kind of is that not crazy or what?
It is definitely odd. I mean, it's unique, maybe is the better term for it. And I think at the end of the day, it probably comes down to numbers. You have Tony Brown in there who's special teams. Jalen Jones has shown, even though he hasn't been on the field much on defense, he's carved out a role on special teams. And the Colts are very confident that if one of their top three, if one of the top on the outside, whether it's Flowers or Brents, happens to go down, Jalen Jones can go in a pinch and play well in that spot. So it is interesting to see the highs of Darrell Baker Jr. I mean, we were talking about him being a surprise or someone that could solidify a spot completely on this defense in training camp, just because of how how well he was playing. And with Juju Brents coming back, Juju Brents looking healthy, playing well, it becomes a numbers game. And usually those final spots go to somebody that can play special teams. So Darrell Baker Jr. is a healthy scratch for the second week in a row. And Will Mallory, I think, was the only other big name that I didn't expect on the inactives. But again, it's a numbers game. You're going to have Mo Alley Cox in there as the blocker. Kylan Granson has asserted himself as really tight end one until Jelani Woods comes back, maybe even with Jelani Woods coming back here
Woods
soon.
has got to prove it's Granson.
Right? Yeah, he's got to prove it because Granson has really started out well this season. And then you have Drew Ogletree, who's healthy now, and we've seen Drew Ogletree have a connection with Anthony Richardson. They've only been able to hook up a couple times, but it seems like those are where the chunk plays are coming from, the tight end position. So not too many surprises on this list. We all knew this coming in, but again, just seeing Ryan Kelly and Bernhard Raimann's name on that inactive list, it shows the importance of the performance of Blake Freeland and Wesley French today.
Yeah, so to fill out the whole list, you've got Darrell Baker Jr., Sam Ehlinger, Ryan Kelly, who is already ruled out with the concussion, Bernhard Raimann, who is already ruled out, Isaiah Land, Will Mallory, and Cameron McGrone. So Land's been inactive each week. This is the second week in a row for Mallory, like you mentioned. Now that they have Drew Ogletree back, it's time for the rookie to kind of sit on the sidelines. McGrone, nice depth linebacker who could play special teams. But yeah, you're right. There were no more surprises beyond that. So guys, we're going to move on to this third segment here in a minute. Get in your questions for us. We'll answer as many of those as we can up until noon. So we got to get over to the stadium to cover this game for you guys there. But first, another word from our sponsors. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. I know they've not really been kind to Anthony Richardson's passing yardage so far, so that always intrigues me. I think I also earlier in the week I didn't see it out there, but whatever Matthew Stafford's passing yards is, I'm probably going above that as well. So this app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, guys. So while you guys finish getting in your questions, please do. More questions, more the merrier. We'll go ahead and start with our predictions for the game, and then we'll move into answering you guys' questions a little bit. So earlier in the week, we did a show with our Rams affiliate, and I predicted 26-20 Colts. They're averaging over 24 points a game. They're actually 10th in scoring right now. They're with the field goals involved, they're actually a pretty decent scoring team right now. The offense is doing enough. The offense is doing enough. And now with Anthony Richardson, they're going to have a little more firepower. I think we see some injection of the downfield passing game today. I think Raheem Morris might be willing to play a little bit of man on that. We'll see. I think the Colts defense is definitely better than the Rams offense, but I'm not willing to say Stafford's going to get shut down. Like, I've been watching Matthew Stafford throughout his whole career, and I've been a huge fan of what he's able to do. Personally, I thought the Colts should have gone after him when he was traded to the Rams. So that he is still that dude to me, and he's shown it through the first few weeks. So I say 26-20 Colts. What do you think?
I'm right there with you. Earlier in the week on Horseshoe Huddle podcast, I had 27-24 Colts. I think that the Colts are still going to be able to score even without Bernhard Raimann and Ryan Kelly into the lineup. There is an opportunity to take more shots where Raheem Morris will play more man. Maybe you see some more shots to Alec Pierce. We've heard Reggie Wayne talk this week about his exact quote was, "Mr. Pierce needs to get things going." So, and I don't think that's necessarily a shot at Alec Pierce. I think that's it's talking about, we need to get him more involved. We need to scheme things up. Us coaches need to do a better job of getting Alec Pierce more involved in the game plan. So there's going to be opportunities. So yes, it is. There are going to be some times where I think Blake Freeland looks a little bit overwhelmed, but I think for the most part he'll be able to hold up. Again, I think the big difference maker is going to be on that defensive side of the ball and creating pressure on Matthew Stafford. So that way this Rams team doesn't just run things up and we end up getting into a shootout where we see the Colts and the Rams, or the Colts trying to keep up with the Rams, scoring 38 points or higher. So I think it's going to be a close game. You might see another game-winning kick from Matt Gay could be in store there. So I think it's going to be closer than people think. But at home, the Colts are getting their starting quarterback back. They're going to be more dynamic on offense. I think the Colts moved to 3-1.
Yeah, I like that one for sure. And we'll go ahead and start these questions. Hopefully this kind of answers this a little bit, what we just talked about, encompassing the game. Baldwin says, GG here, diehard Pacers fan, coming in for some Colts coverage. What's a solid, humble bet I can make on this one? Again, the Colts to win, I like them by within 6+ points. Like, they should control this game. If you have any prop bets out there for like sacks, I think the Colts should sack the Rams. Honestly, 3 is a low number for me. I think 3 sacks is a safe number for me. Mm-hmm. If you're earlier, I did a Fantasy Friday segment as well where I said start Zach Moss. Whatever site you're using, Zach Moss probably go on the over on that. I think he's in tune for big game because the Rams have kind of this track record so far this year. Christian McCaffrey, of course, is Christian McCaffrey, but he and Kenneth Walker from the Seahawks both averaged over 5 yards per carry in their games. Joe Mixon had a 14-yard touchdown against the Rams last week, so I think Zach Moss is in line for a big week. Is there any other main topic or like player you think should be bet on in this one?
I mean, I think if you have the ability to do an Anthony Richardson anytime touchdown, you take it.
Yes.
I mean, two games, and he has 3 touchdowns on the ground, really a game and a quarter, 3 touchdowns on the ground. He has 1 through the air. So, I mean, I would expect another rushing touchdown out of Anthony Richardson today. So take an anytime touchdown on that. Maybe a yards prep on say Michael Pittman Jr. Again, Michael Pittman has consistently been getting 70, 80 yards,
8 catches.
Yeah. So if you look at the yards for Michael Pittman today as well, he's going to probably have, I don't know if Akella Weatherspoon is going to follow Pittman around, but I'm sure that Shane Steichen is going to try to get Pittman involved. And we've seen that when Anthony Richardson needs to throw it to someone in a pinch, it's been Michael Pittman Jr.
Yeah, Pittman is – so initially I didn't think Pittman was going to absolutely dominate the targets, but he has. I do think other guys will catch up to him. Like Josh Downs has been pretty steady. I think when they have kind of a full cupboard and Jelani Woods is there, Woods probably won't be targeted as much as Granson because Granson's going to do some more short stuff. I honestly think the pecking order throughout the year is going to be Pittman, Downs, Granson, and Pierce, and then Woods will fit in there somewhere. But that seems likely. Interestingly enough, something we haven't touched on yet, which we probably should. So KJ Hamler was just signed to the practice squad this weekend. That's very intriguing. That's a player who has been a rumored trade target for the Colts for like 2 years now. He is a very skilled, talented, very shifty slot receiver. He essentially, when he was at Penn State, was Josh Downs. So this, I think Zach Hicks mentioned this, Zach, our co-host, this feels like the Trey Sermon thing from like last week. It also feels like the Kiki QT thing for me a few years ago. Like, I think Hamler within a couple of weeks will earn a role on the practice squad and then come onto the active roster. And that's probably going to be your 5th mainstay receiver. Because right now they've been rolling with the 4. They've elevated Juwan Winfrey for 3 games. He's maxed out unless they're going to move him up full time. They got Amari Rogers for this game. I think that Hamler is going to be the 5th receiver permanently.
Yeah, I would agree there. He just adds a different skill set than the rest of the receivers on the practice squad do. He's shown to be a weapon in the NFL, while some of the others have been valuable in their special teams aspect, but not necessarily someone you want out there and playing a big role in case one of the starters for the Colts goes down. If Isaiah McKenzie goes down because Isaiah McKenzie has been used here or there, but he's mostly just a return man, it seems, with Pierce, Pittman, and Downs dominating the snap counts. But it's very interesting, and I think Zach is right on the money there, where you see him kind of earn a spot on the practice squad, get familiar with this scheme and with this team, and within a couple weeks, he's elevated to the active roster to be that fifth wide receiver. So Chris Ballard is always looking. This team is always looking to improve. So while there wasn't a fifth wide receiver taken right at the start of the season, it looks like the Colts are on their way to adding that to this roster. And it's going to be interesting here in a couple weeks how the numbers do shake out, because you still have technically once Jelani Woods comes out, you'll have 5 tight ends on this active roster. And then KJ Hamler would make 5 wide receivers. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of numbers they play. Taylor comes back. You'll have 4 running backs. You can't keep them all. So it's going to be interesting to see who does get cut and who's kept.
Yeah, so we'll move along, get to more of your guys' questions, but that's definitely something worth monitoring in the next couple weeks. This one, as of right now, what position would you pick in the first round of the draft if you're the Colts? So they'd be in the playoffs. They'd be in the 20s if the draft started this week. Yeah, man, I don't know.
Can I use a cop-out answer? It depends who's on the board really at the time.
I think there's no screaming issues for me on this roster. I think I would go best player available.
Yeah.
And I mean, who the blue chip guys are in this coming draft, and sure, they could use a couple of them. Everyone wants us to say Marvin Harrison Jr., but I don't think the Colts are going to be bad enough to get Marvin Harrison Jr.
I don't think so.
I would just go best player available. I mean, injuries could dictate what happens next. And I mean, I don't really want them to get a running back in the first round, but let's say everything plays out how it's expected to, and Taylor is traded. Zach Moss is a free agent as well. And I don't know if they want to invest in him as their starter, for a year or two. They may be interested in adding someone who was a Nyheim Hines. I can't say that name now. A Hines type. I don't know. But yeah, I think it's too early to tell what they need.
I think so too. And if you're gonna make me choose right now, it'd be, you could look at adding another wide receiver if you see that if Pittman gets re-signed, which I think that will happen. Josh Downs continues to excel. Maybe you add another wide receiver, another Z wide receiver, to put some pressure on Alec Pierce if he does not perform. You could always look at pass rusher. Samson Ebukam and Kwity Paye are doing well, but if you had the opportunity to take a pass rusher, say like Jared Verse out of Florida State, I think you jump on that opportunity. Another cornerback, because the Colts have Juju Brents, but Kenny Moore is a free agent. You would assume if he continues to play well, the Colts would want to bring Kenny Moore back. But is Dallas Flowers really the answer at that other starting cornerback spot? Jalen Jones, I really don't know. So if you have the opportunity to take a good cornerback in the first round, I think you would have to jump on that too. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. We're only 3 weeks in. We have no clue where the Colts are even going to be picking. Right now, they'd be picking 27th, which would be the end of the first round. So you'd be looking at some of the guys around that range. But a lot of the blue chip guys will probably be gone at that point in the draft. The Colts are picking this late.
That means trade back is what that means. That's Chris Ballard.
That would probably be Ballard trading back into the second to get some extra picks. So I think it's just way too early to tell. But there are some positions to keep an eye on.
Yeah, hopefully we answer that one okay. Yeah. Next one up here. Can you talk Blake Freeland expectations? How do you look in training camp? Yeah, so he's been, for a somewhat high pick, he's been kind of anonymous so far because there's no clear role for him yet. But Freeland, he's been shaky. I kind of equate him to Bernhard Raimann early last year, honestly. Very athletic guy with great size. But he has struggled with mostly. I know he had one rough preseason game, but yeah, I think they got underneath him because he's a really tall guy, so he's going to struggle with guys who can get below his belly from the outside, I think. So his reach right now is probably what he's going to need to focus on the most. And being a left tackle, that's not great. But if he can just force guys around the arc high so that Anthony can go up into the pocket and then take off if necessary, that's fine. I don't think like Freeland might have a shaky game. I'm not expecting anything great, and we shouldn't expect anything great. He's a rookie offensive tackle who's probably going to be making his first start. So, I mean,
yeah, I think when you're talking about Blake Freeland, very athletic prospect, 6'8", over 300 pounds, was tested as one of the most athletic offensive linemen in the history of the NFL Combine. But again, he's kind of in the same spot that Bernhard Raimann was at. His play strength just isn't there yet. So he had his ups and downs. There were times in OTAs where we saw Blake Freeland running at right tackle with the starters, moving Braden Smith into right guard. He has position flexibility, can play both left and right. It's just going to be can he hold up against the bull rush and can he stay in front of the pass rushers of the Rams? So you don't expect him to be perfect, but I think he should be able to hold his own as long as the Colts do give him some help at times.
Yeah. Next up, what are the chances that Kwity Paye gets 10+ sacks this year? He has one in 3 weeks in a row. He actually now has 2 sequences in his career of 3 consecutive games with a sack. I'll say he gets another one today. He lines up against Rob Havenstein. Havenstein hasn't had the best year, but Kwity has bend and knows how to get low, and Havenstein's another guy who's a mountain. So I'm going to say 4 weeks in a row for Kwity, and I do think he gets to 10. I don't think he's going to have like 17 or 18. But I think he'll probably end up around 10 to 12 sacks this year.
I'm right there with you. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets a sack today. It's all going to be determined on if he can stay healthy, because Kwity Paye, he gets on these rolls, and then it seems like it just comes to a screeching halt where he has to deal with an ankle injury that keeps him out a couple weeks or a hamstring injury. If Kwity Paye can stay healthy, lock it in, 10 sacks for Kwity Paye this year.
Yep. Next up, this is an interesting one I've been kind of thinking of lately as well. Safety. Should the Colts play Nick Cross or have Blackman and Thomas played well enough to stay on the field? So we talked about earlier this week, like Julian Blackman's been fine and has done his thing. Like his specialty is just killing things in front of him. His coverage when he's coming downfield is really good. He's also a very good run defender. Rodney Thomas is the one we haven't heard from much this year. You know, he's that deep safety, the backfield defender. Does a lot of cleaning up. Like last year, I think 2 or 3 of his 4 picks were off of tipped passes. Mm-hmm. He's a very opportunistic player. We haven't seen that yet. Honestly, I predicted that he gets an interception this week. I think he hasn't just lost his touch or anything, and I don't think he's doing poorly, but they could probably be getting a little more out of that spot. I would keep Blackman where he is. I do think they need to find a way to get Nick Cross more involved. He was in there at the end last week. But yeah, I don't think it's time for Cross to like totally supplant anyone in the lineup, but I would get him a little more involved.
I agree. He just hasn't shown enough in practice to really supplant one of those guys, especially with Julian Blackman. The position switch, I think, has rejuvenized Blackman. It's definitely a better fit for Blackman in this Gus Bradley system. And I think if Nick Cross wants to get on the field, it's going to have to be in that deep safety role with Rodney Thomas. So he's going to have to show that he can cover the deep part of the field, be instinctive, use his ball skills there. I think that's the best opportunity to see Cross on the field. But I think Blackman is second on this team in tackles, and he's been really doing his thing. So it's going to be hard to get Julian Blackman out of the lineup. But if with the way Gus Bradley has been strictly sticking mostly to 2 safeties, Cross is going to have to beat out Thomas if he wants time on defense.
Totally agree. All right, guys. So I think that's about it for us. We're going to wrap things up. Andrew and I are going to head to the stadium to cover this thing for you guys live. So first, I want to just, thank you guys, anyone who is out here at Nevermore today. Be sure to keep coming out. Like we're really enjoying doing this. Great deal. It's like $50 for 4 hours of all you can eat food. Open bar. They've got games out here. The rooftop is arguably the best view of any like bar or anything in the city. So this place has so much potential. So come on out, like just come hang out. You can watch us, you can ignore us, and you can play games, whatever. But no, this place is awesome. If you've never been out here before, you won't regret it. You'll want to make it one of your regular stops. But if you don't already, follow at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter, Andrew Moore NFL on Twitter, Locked On Colts Horseshoe Huddle on YouTube. Give us ratings and reviews if you're enjoying the show. That stuff actually really helps both shows out quite a bit. Moves us up the charts and everything like that. And with that, we will see you guys after the game, telling you all about it.